The day Brielle Thornwick decided my family's century-old lake belonged to her precious son was the day she picked a fight with the wrong rancher. 6 a.m. 3 police cruisers screaming up my drive, gravel exploding under their tires like machine gun fire. The smell of diesel exhaust mixing with morning coffee still warm in my hands. And there's this HOA president bitch filming me from her pristine Range Rover, practically salivating as cops surround my porch. She'd called them on me for trespassing on land my great-grandfather homesteaded in 1887. Her Instagram influencer son had been charging strangers $200 to fish my private lake, the same water where my grandmother's ashes rest. Then Mama Karen whipped out forged documents claiming I was illegally blocking community access. But Brielle made one fatal mistake. She had no clue I controlled the budget for every service keeping her perfect little subdivision running. Drop a comment. Have you ever wanted to completely destroy someone who tried to steal from your family? And tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing my ranch family spread across the country. My name's Garrett Holloway, and this is the story of how a suburban HOA president tried to steal my family's soul and learned why you never mess with a rancher who knows his rights. 2,400 acres of Montana paradise, carved from wilderness by my great-grandfather Augustus in 1887. That 12-acre spring-fed lake where he built our first cabin, it's where 4 generations of Holloways have been born, raised, and laid to rest. The morning coffee steam mixing with mountain air, leather saddle creaking under my weight, meadowlarks calling across pastures, this isn't just land, it's legacy. When Grandma Eleanor passed 3 years back, we scattered her ashes at sunset where she used to shell peas while watching grandkids swim. The sound of water lapping those smooth stones still carries her laughter on quiet evenings. I'm 45, divorced, living alone since my daughter Skylar left for college. Been working this ranch since I could hold reins, planned to die here. Never imagined some HOA princess would declare war on everything my family built. 5 years ago, everything changed. Developer bought the adjacent section, promised rural harmony while cramming 200 McMansions onto postage stamp lots, called it Whispering Pines Estates. Like an idiot, I signed their emergency vehicle access easement just being neighborly. That's when Brielle Thornwick slithered into my life like a designer-dressed rattlesnake. Late 40s, blonde highlights costing more than my monthly feed bill, driving a Range Rover that's never seen actual dirt. Real estate agent married to some bank VP, the kind who pronounces agriculture like it's a communicable disease. Her complaints started immediately. Cattle smelled disrupting dinner parties. My native grasses were unsightly from her kitchen window. Could I mow them down, make things more professional? I laughed. Big mistake. Then precious son Tucker discovered my lake. 22-year-old Instagram influencer with the work ethic of roadkill started bringing friends for content creation, and I use that term loosely. Diesel trucks rumbling down my access road at dawn, beer bottles glinting in cattails, electronic music drowning out bird songs that predated his entire bloodline. But tolerance became trespassing. Trespassing became business. Professional cameras, buzzing drones, Tucker charging $300 for exclusive Montana wilderness access, posted about my family's private lake like he'd inherited it from his great-great-grandfather. The stench of entitlement was worse than fresh manure. That's when Brielle played her trump card, or thought she did. Evening knock, manila folder, that patronizing smile that makes skin crawl. Garrett, I've done historical research. Her voice dripped fake concern. Original homestead papers included recreational water rights for township residents. She spread photocopied documents across my kitchen table, pointing at official county clerk stamps with manicured claws. We must respect community traditions. I'd read enough legal documents over the years to spot amateur forgery. Her papers referenced Whispering Pines Township cute, except her subdivision didn't exist until 2019. My great-grandfather's homestead predated it by 132 years, but I also remembered my grandfather's advice. When someone shows you fake papers, let them think you're falling for it while you gather evidence of their fraud. I'll need to review these with my attorney, I said, photographing every page. Her smile faltered. Surely that's unnecessary. We're all neighbors here. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. Outside, cattle settled for the night, their lowing carrying across land my ancestors bled to build. I was looking at a woman sitting in my kitchen, surrounded by 4 generations of memories, trying to steal our most sacred place with fabricated documents. But Brielle had made her first critical error. She thought kindness meant weakness. She thought rural meant stupid. She thought some country rancher wouldn't know how to fight back. She was about to learn that Montana ranchers don't just know the land, we know the law. And when someone tries to steal your heritage with forged papers, you don't just defend yourself. You destroy them completely. Brielle didn't waste time turning her fake documents into a weapon. She weaponized the entire county bureaucracy. 2 weeks later, County Inspector Martinez knocked on my door, looking embarrassed as hell. "Sorry, Garrett, got a formal complaint about illegal water access restrictions." Lady called headquarters 3 times demanding immediate action. We walked the property together, Martinez shaking his head. "This is horseshit. Your documentation's perfect, boundaries are clear, no violations anywhere." But he still had to file the official report. "She's creating a paper trail, making this look like an ongoing dispute. Smart, actually. Diabolical, but smart." The real gut punch came next. Brielle organized a community safety meeting at her clubhouse. 15 neighbors showed up, mostly newcomers who'd never stepped foot on actual ranch land. Brielle stood at the front with poster-sized aerial photos, pointing like she was briefing generals for war. "This man's cattle are contaminating our children's watershed," she declared, voice dripping with maternal concern. "His increasingly aggressive behavior toward families using traditional recreational areas suggests serious mental instability. We moved here for peaceful rural living, not to be terrorized by some feudal rancher who thinks he owns the entire valley." The lies burned, but the financial rumors cut deeper. Whispers that inheritance taxes had broken me, that the ranch was failing, that I'd sell to developers within months. In ranch country, suggesting a man can't pay his bills is character assassination. Time to fight back. My grandfather always said the best defense against liars is overwhelming documentation. So I hired the county's top surveyor, Martinez's brother-in-law, for GPS boundary mapping. $800 well spent when those satellite coordinates revealed Brielle's pristine fence encroached 3 feet onto my land for 200 yards. Next came the security cameras. 8 high-definition units with night vision and cloud backup, covering every inch of lake access. The sound of steel posts hitting Montana hardpan with the post hole digger felt like drum beats before battle. But I also remembered reading about adverse possession laws during my divorce proceedings, how continuous trespassing for 5 years can actually create legal property claims. Every day I let Tucker's circus continue was potentially giving away my rights. The cameras would document everything, but more importantly, they'd prove I was actively defending my land. Within days, they caught pure gold. Saturday morning, Tucker arrived with a full film crew, lights, boom mics, catering truck. They were shooting an energy drink commercial featuring authentic Montana wilderness. The audio was priceless. Tucker telling the director, "Yeah, this is my family's lake. Been coming here since I was a kid." Complete bullshit. Kid was born in Phoenix, moved here 5 years ago. But reviewing more footage revealed something that made my blood freeze. Tucker wasn't just lying about ownership. He was running a full commercial operation. His Instagram had exploded to 50,000 followers after that viral Hidden Paradise video. Now dozens of wannabe influencers were paying him $300 each for exclusive Montana lake access. Cars lined the county road every weekend. Strangers trampled through my pastures, leaving trash and disturbing cattle. The stench of abandoned camping gear mixed with pine needles. Broken beer bottles glittered like landmines in grass where my livestock grazed. My prize bull Augustus, named for my great-grandfather, stopped eating normally. Cattle stress from constant human intrusion was affecting the entire herd. These weren't just weekend photographers. This was industrial-scale exploitation of my family's most sacred ground. Then came the mini twist that changed everything. Tucker's latest Instagram post showed him building a rustic fishing dock at his family's traditional spot. Except he'd built it on my property, without permission, charging clients extra for the authentic experience. The time-lapse video had 30,000 likes and counting. But I had every second of that construction on camera, plus audio of Tucker explaining his profit margins to the film crew, commercial trespassing, property damage, fraud, all documented with his own narration. That evening, sipping whiskey on my porch while cattle settled for the night, I realized Brielle had made a fundamental miscalculation. She thought some country rancher wouldn't know how to fight suburban warfare. She assumed rural meant stupid, that I'd roll over for her fake documents and crocodile tears. She was about to learn that Montana ranchers don't just know land and livestock. We know law, politics, and how to turn documentation into destruction. Her son's social media empire was built on stolen foundation, and foundations can crumble faster than they're built, especially when you control the demolition. Brielle's next move proved she'd learned nothing from watching her son's documentation disaster unfold on my security cameras. 3 neighbors knocked on my door the following Tuesday, the Hendersons, Patels, and some new family whose name I never caught. They looked uncomfortable as hell, shuffling their feet like kids forced to apologize. "Garrett, we're filing a joint nuisance complaint," Henderson mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "The HOA says cattle operations violate our subdivision's rural residential harmony standards." I'd known Henderson for 3 years. Decent guy, helped me round up strays when they wandered onto the county road. But Brielle had gotten to him somehow. "What exactly is the nuisance, Bob?" "Well, the smell and the noise. Early morning cattle sounds disturbing our property values." Property values. There it was. Brielle had convinced them my ranch, which predated their subdivision by over a century, was somehow damaging their investment. The woman was building a legal attack from multiple angles, creating the appearance of widespread community opposition. But her real escalation came 3 days later, and it was pure, genius-level manipulation. I was checking fence lines when my phone buzzed. Sheriff's dispatch. "Domestic disturbance call, possible threats of violence." My stomach dropped. The address was mine. Deputy Collins arrived within minutes, body camera rolling, looking tense. "Garrett, got a call about you threatening a neighbor. Lady says you became aggressive during a property discussion, implied physical violence." "Which lady?" "Brielle Thornwick. Says you told her to stay off your land or else." Made threatening gestures. I almost laughed. Almost. Because Collins was serious. And in today's world, accusations stick even when they're complete fabrications. But I remembered something my attorney had drilled into me during the divorce. Always stay calm with law enforcement. Never get defensive. And if you have evidence, present it professionally. "Deputy, I've got security cameras covering every inch of my property. When exactly did this alleged threat occur?" Collins checked his notes. "Yesterday, approximately 4 p.m., near your eastern fence line." I pulled out my phone, opened the cloud storage app. "Let's take a look." The footage was beautiful. Brielle approaching my fence, me explaining property boundaries while standing 15 feet away, speaking in normal conversational tones. Her screaming at me about rural terrorism and threatening the community. Me walking away without raising my voice or making any gestures remotely resembling threats. Collins watched the whole thing, shaking his head. "Ma'am clearly has issues with the truth," he made notes in his report. "But Garrett, you need to know she's filing for a restraining order. Claims you have a history of aggressive behavior towards subdivision residents." A restraining order. Brilliant, actually. Even if it got dismissed, the mere filing would create legal documentation suggesting I was dangerous, unstable, the aggressor in this situation. Her husband's law firm major conflict of interest she conveniently hadn't disclosed was probably coaching every move. But 2 could play the documentation game. I'd been reading Montana property law since our first encounter, learning everything about homestead rights, water law, and harassment statutes. Turns out filing false police reports is a felony, carrying up to 2 years in prison. Each false report creates a separate criminal charge. And the patterns of harassment I was documenting could support civil damages including attorney fees and reputation harm. My counterpunch came swift and surgical. First, I filed my own harassment complaint, supported by 47 documented incidents over 6 months. Every trespassing event, every false claim, every attempt to damage my business relationships, all time-stamped with photographic evidence. Then I hired McKenzie & Associates, the best water rights attorneys in the state. Cost me $5,000 up front. But they confirmed what I'd suspected. My 1887 homestead patent included absolute water rights under federal prior appropriation doctrine. No HOA, no county, no state agency could override those rights without constitutional due process and just compensation. The insurance gambit was Brielle's next masterpiece of manipulation. My liability carrier called Thursday morning. "Mr. Holloway, we've received a claim regarding your property creating an attractive nuisance. The HOA is demanding you pay for additional security patrols around their subdivision, plus they want a community access easement to your lake. They're threatening a lawsuit unless you comply." Attractive nuisance. Legal term meaning your property draws people into dangerous situations, like a swimming pool might attract children who could drown. except my lake was surrounded by no trespassing signs and security cameras. Hardly an invitation to the public. The insurance company initially sided with Brielle. Lawsuit avoidance was their priority, not my rights. They threatened rate increases unless I resolved the community concerns amicably. But here's what they didn't know. Those security cameras had captured something extraordinary. Tucker's latest Instagram post, bragging about earning $47,000 in 3 months from exclusive lake access fees. He'd inadvertently documented the commercial exploitation of my property, providing perfect evidence that any attractive nuisance was artificially created by his own illegal business operations. Sometimes the best defense is letting your enemies hang themselves with their own rope. Brielle's desperation started showing when she called Channel 7 News with her sob story about wealthy rancher bullying working families. I was fixing fence posts when my daughter Skylar called from college, voice tight with worry. "Dad, you're on the evening news. Some woman is saying you're threatening families and blocking public lake access. They're showing aerial footage of our property." The story aired that night. Ranch owner denies lake access to community children. Brielle had staged the perfect photo op, crying kids in swimsuits standing at my fence line, holding signs reading "Let us swim" and "Stop rural bullying." The reporter bought every word, painting me as some corporate agriculture villain denying innocent families their traditional recreational rights. But what really showed Brielle's growing panic was the GoFundMe page. Save Public Lake Access. Legal defense against corporate intimidation. She'd raised $12,000 in 2 days, claiming she needed money to fight my army of lawyers and protect community rights. The comments section was brutal. People from across the country calling me a greedy bastard, threatening to boycott Montana beef, demanding the governor seize my property for public use. Death threats started arriving by email and Facebook Messenger. 3 local businesses canceled their contracts with me that week. The feed store, the veterinary clinic, even the mechanic who'd serviced my equipment for 15 years. Economic warfare designed to pressure me into surrendering. But Brielle's most vicious escalation was pure sabotage. Saturday morning, my water pump system failed catastrophically. 80-year-old equipment finally giving up, or so it seemed, until I found the severed electrical lines and smashed control panel hidden behind the pump house. $8,000 in repairs, and my cattle lost water access during the hottest week of summer. The security cameras caught shadows moving near the pump house at 2 a.m. Friday night, but the figures wore hoodies and kept their faces hidden. Smart, but not smart enough to avoid leaving tire tracks in the mud-distinctive tread pattern matching Tucker's lifted pickup truck. Sheriff Collins investigated, found insufficient evidence for criminal charges. Amazing how quickly law enforcement standards change when political pressure gets applied. Brielle's husband sat on the county hospital board with Collins' wife. Coincidence, I'm sure. But every action creates reaction, and I'd been learning more than just property law. My daughter Skylar, journalism major with her mother's investigative instincts, started digging into Brielle's background while I dealt with repairs. What she found was dynamite. Brielle had been fired from her previous real estate job for falsifying property documents. Client reviews online accused her of scamming elderly sellers with forged paperwork and inflated fees. Better yet, Brielle's husband's bank was facing federal audit for questionable lending practices, the same bank holding the subdivision's construction loans and most residents' mortgages. If that institution failed, Whispering Pines property values would crater overnight. Meanwhile, Tucker's Instagram empire was generating its own destruction. His Free the Lake party invitation went viral. 200 confirmed attendees for a peaceful protest to reclaim community water rights. Except peaceful protest in influencer speak means drunken invasion with professional photography equipment. They came like locusts Saturday night, cars parked along the county road for half a mile, strangers hiking across my pastures carrying coolers, camping gear, and enough camera equipment to film a movie. The smell of marijuana smoke mixed with barbecue charcoal as they set up on my lake shore like conquering armies. The party lasted until 3 a.m. Fireworks launched over water where my grandmother's ashes rested, electronic music drowning out night sounds that had echoed unchanged for generations. When sunrise revealed the damage, I wanted to vomit. Trampled fence lines, scattered cattle, and a grass fire started by Roman candles that consumed 40 acres of prime pasture. The volunteer fire department responded, along with sheriff's deputies and an ambulance for 3 alcohol poisoning cases. $15,000 in property damage, not counting the ecological destruction to wetlands and nesting areas. Police arrested 3 partygoers for underage drinking, but Tucker and Brielle had vanished before questioning. Convenient. But while documenting fire damage the next morning, I noticed something that changed everything. The county emergency services bill was addressed to my ranch, not the subdivision. Every police call, every fire response, every ambulance run to Whispering Pines was being billed to my property address. I started pulling old records, and the pattern was crystal clear. For 5 years, every emergency service call to harass me had been funded by my own tax payments. Brielle had been using my money to wage war against me. But that discovery led to something even bigger. In my grandfather's old filing cabinet, buried under decades of farm equipment receipts, I found a folder marked County Service District, 1962. Inside were documents that would flip this entire battle on its head. Documents proving I held legal authority. Brielle never suspected existed. Documents that would let me destroy her perfect suburban kingdom with a single phone call. That manila folder in my grandfather's filing cabinet contained the nuclear option I never knew I possessed. The documents were yellowed with age, stamped with official seals from 1962. Rural Service District Formation, Cedar Ridge County. My hands actually trembled reading the legal language, because buried in bureaucratic jargon was the key to everything. Back in the 60s, Montana created special districts to provide municipal services to scattered rural properties. My grandfather's ranch, being the largest landholding in the area, was designated as the anchor parcel for the entire region's emergency services, road maintenance, and utilities coordination. But here's the kicker. The original agreement automatically made the ranch owner the legal service district administrator with broad oversight powers. Powers that transferred with property ownership, whether anyone remembered them or not. I was the district supervisor. Had been for 3 years since inheriting the ranch. And I'd been completely clueless. The legal framework was mind-blowing. As district administrator, I had authority to approve or deny all municipal service contracts for the entire area. Police patrols, fire department response, emergency medical services, even road maintenance for subdivision access roads, everything required my signature. More importantly, I had the legal right to audit all district expenditures and terminate contracts for cause with 30 days' notice. My attorney confirmed it Monday morning, voice practically vibrating with excitement. Garrett, this is legitimate. The 1962 Rural Service District Act is still active law. These powers were never revoked or transferred. You've been unknowingly subsidizing services that primarily benefit the subdivision while they use those same services to harass you. The financial implications were staggering. The service district was funded through special property tax assessments based on acreage. My ranch paid 60% of the total budget, roughly $200,000 annually, while the entire HOA subdivision collectively paid the remaining 40%. For 5 years, I'd been funding my own persecution. Every police call Brielle made to harass me, every emergency response to Tucker's illegal parties, every patrol car that showed up to intimidate me, all paid for with my tax money. But the real revelation came when we examined 20 years of district financial records. The spending patterns were criminal. Massive overcharges for security services provided by companies owned by Brielle's husband's business associates. The HOA had been billing the district for private amenities, pool maintenance, landscaping, clubhouse utilities, even their tennis court lighting. They'd systematically looted public funds to subsidize their private lifestyle, thinking the country rancher would never notice or understand the bureaucratic shell game. I'd found their Achilles heel, and it was made of pure greed. The technical details were beautiful in their simplicity. Montana's sunshine laws required complete transparency for all service district operations. I could demand immediate access to every contract, every invoice, every payment authorization for the past decade, and what I'd find would be enough to destroy them all. My authority included power to terminate contracts with 30 days written notice, audit all expenditures for compliance, and refer financial irregularities to state and federal prosecutors. I could literally shut down their access to police, fire, and emergency services while demanding restitution for years of embezzlement. But the psychological impact was even more powerful. For months, I'd been playing defense, reacting to Brielle's attacks, documenting harassment while she controlled the narrative. Now I held the ultimate trump card, the power to dismantle her entire suburban kingdom with legal authority she'd never suspected existed. Sitting in my kitchen that evening, coffee growing cold while I reviewed the documents for the 10th time, I realized this wasn't just about property anymore. This was about justice for every rural landowner who'd been bullied by entitled suburban colonizers. Every rancher, farmer, or longtime resident who'd watched newcomers arrive and immediately demand changes to accommodate their preferences. Brielle thought she was fighting some isolated country rancher with limited resources and legal knowledge. She had no idea she'd picked a war with someone who literally controlled the infrastructure keeping her perfect community functioning. The service district administrator had been asleep for 3 years. Time to wake up and exercise some long overdue authority. Time to teach an HOA president that rural doesn't mean powerless. It means connected to systems of law and governance that predate her subdivision by generations. Monday morning, I called an emergency meeting with my newly assembled war council, attorney, accountant, and one very excited journalism major daughter who'd driven down from college for this. Mackenzie and Associates conference room smelled like leather and old law books, the kind of place where fortunes get made and lost with pen strokes. My attorney, Sarah Mackenzie, spread the service district documents across the mahogany table like battle plans. Garrett, these powers are extraordinary. You can terminate every municipal service contract with 30 days notice, but we need to be surgical about this document everything, follow proper procedures, make it impossible for them to claim procedural violations. My accountant friend, Pete Morrison guy, who'd helped me through the divorce and ranch inheritance, was already deep in financial records, calculator clicking like machine gun fire. Jesus Christ, Garrett, look at these numbers. They've been billing the district $400,000 annually for enhanced security services. Market rate for actual patrol coverage would be maybe $80,000. But the smoking gun was Tucker's own social media documenting his illegal income. $47,000 in 3 months charging for lake access, plus another $32,000 from corporate sponsorships using my property as backdrop. All documented with timestamps, geolocation data, and his own narration about profit margins. Skylar had her laptop open, monitoring social media chatter and mapping Brielle's network. Dad, it gets better. I found connections between the security company overcharging you and Brielle's husband's bank, same ownership group, same business address. They've been running a kickback scheme through municipal contracts. The strategy emerged over strong coffee and Montana determination. 3 phases, each designed to apply maximum pressure while maintaining legal high ground. Phase 1, formal notification. I'd exercise my authority as district administrator to demand immediate audit of all financial records, notify all parties of pending contract reviews, and establish my legal standing before taking action. Phase 2, systematic service termination. Non-essential services would be cut first. The expensive security patrols, emergency landscaping services, special event coordination. Let them feel the financial pressure while maintaining essential safety services. Phase 3, public confrontation at the scheduled HOA meeting with full media documentation of the corruption evidence. Maximum embarrassment, maximum legal exposure, maximum community impact. Sarah explained the sunshine laws that would protect us. Every service district meeting must be open to public, all financial records accessible under Freedom of Information Act. Montana's transparency requirements are some of the strongest in the nation. They can't hide behind closed doors once you start demanding answers. But I also remembered reading about civil forfeiture laws during my research. Property and assets used in commission of crimes can be seized by authorities. If we could prove Tucker's truck was used to transport equipment for trespassing operations, or that Brielle's house was purchased with embezzled funds, we might recover damages beyond simple restitution. The timeline was critical. Tucker's biggest Instagram event was scheduled for 3 weeks out, some wilderness challenge, sponsored by energy drink companies, expecting 500 participants at his lake. Perfect opportunity to document massive commercial trespassing while demonstrating the need for immediate action. Pete would complete forensic audit of 10 years' worth of service district spending, identifying every questionable transaction. Sarah would prepare civil lawsuits for fraud, defamation, and conversion while filing criminal referrals with state and federal prosecutors. Skylar would coordinate with that investigative journalist interested in HOA abuse stories, timing media coverage for maximum impact. But we also needed allies. Montana politics runs on relationships, and Brielle's husband's bank connections meant we needed support from people with real influence. The breakthrough came from unexpected quarters. My neighbor Chuck Morrison, Pete's cousin, whose family had ranched here since the 1920s, mentioned that County Commissioner Janet Torres was looking for re-election issues that would resonate with rural voters. Janet's been getting pressure from developers wanting to change agricultural zoning, Chuck explained. She'd love to have a high-profile case proving she stands with longtime families against suburban manipulation. Environmental groups were another natural ally. The Montana Wilderness Society had been monitoring social media damage to pristine ecosystems, documenting how Instagram tourism was destroying fragile habitats. My Lake's commercialization fit their narrative perfectly. Even some subdivision residents were growing tired of Brielle's drama. 3 families had approached Chuck privately, complaining about emergency assessments and questioning HOA financial management. They'd support transparency and accountability, especially if it reduced their fees. The psychological preparation was crucial too. This wasn't just about winning anymore, it was about setting precedent for rural property rights across the state. Every rancher, farmer, and longtime resident facing similar pressure would be watching how this played out. As we wrapped up the meeting, Sarah handed me a thick folder of legal documents. "Garrett, you're about to become very famous. This case will be studied in law schools. Make sure you're ready for that level of scrutiny." Walking out to my truck, breathing mountain air that carried scents of pine and possibility, I realized something fundamental had shifted. For months, I'd been reacting, defending, documenting harassment while Brielle controlled the narrative. Now I held the weapons. Time to go on offense. My opening gambit arrived via certified mail on Tuesday morning. A formal letter to the HOA board announcing my authority as Rural Service District Administrator and demanding immediate financial audit of all municipal contracts. The letter was surgical in its precision. Effective immediately, all service district expenditures require administrator approval. Any unauthorized use of public funds for private subdivision amenities constitutes embezzlement under Montana Criminal Code Section 45-6-316. You have 30 days to provide complete financial records or face service termination proceedings. I copied the county commissioners, state attorney general, local media, and the FBI's white-collar crime division. Overkill? Maybe, but I wanted everyone watching when the dominoes started falling. Brielle's panic response was immediate and spectacular. Within hours, she'd called an emergency HOA meeting for that evening. The email to residents was pure hysteria. Urgent. Rancher threatens community safety. Emergency action required. She claimed I was making terrorist threats against their basic services, endangering children and elderly residents through rural extremism. But her real desperation showed when she contacted the governor's office. According to my source in county administration, Martinez's wife worked there. Brielle had actually tried to file a domestic terrorism report, claiming I was using infrastructure control to threaten community survival. The governor's staff apparently laughed her out of the building. Meanwhile, she hired Pinnacle Crisis Management, a Seattle PR firm specializing in reputation damage control. Cost the HOA $37,000 for a 2-week engagement, paid from community funds without board approval, just added embezzlement to her growing list of crimes. The smear campaign launched immediately. Fake social media accounts popped up across platforms posting negative reviews of my ranch, claiming I mistreated animals, polluted waterways, and threatened neighbors. Anonymous tips flooded state agencies, IRS, EPA, animal control, building inspectors, all alleging various violations that would require expensive investigations to disprove. Tucker escalated his own game, posting a tearful video claiming I'd threatened him with violence. "This crazy rancher said he'd make me disappear if I didn't stop using the community lake," he sobbed, designer tears rolling down his face. "I'm scared for my safety, scared for my family." Complete fabrication, but the video went viral. Death threats started arriving by the dozen, people calling me a psychopath, demanding authorities arrest me before I snapped completely. The algorithm loves controversy, and Tucker was feeding it exactly what it craved. But while they manufactured drama online, I was building my case systematically. My attorney had filed preliminary injunctions against further harassment, supported by 47 documented false reports. Each fabricated complaint created separate criminal charges under Montana law filing. False police reports carries up to 2 years prison time, and the pattern we documented suggested organized conspiracy. Pete's forensic audit was revealing criminal activity spanning years. The security company billing $400,000 annually was owned by Brielle's brother-in-law, providing services that existed mostly on paper. Actual patrol hours logged were less than 20% of billed time. They'd been stealing $300,000 yearly from public funds. The subdivision's landscaping, pool maintenance, and clubhouse utilities had all been fraudulently charged to the service district. Even their tennis court lighting upgrade was billed as emergency road illumination, creative accounting that would make Bernie Madoff proud. But Brielle's most desperate move was pure sabotage designed to create emergency justification for her actions. Thursday night, someone cut my fence lines in 3 locations, allowing cattle to wander onto county roads during rush hour traffic. The sabotage was carefully planned cuts made where security cameras couldn't see, timed to create maximum chaos and danger. My phone started buzzing at 6 a.m. with frantic calls. 40 head of cattle scattered across Highway 93, causing traffic delays and near accidents. Sheriff's deputies, highway patrol, and emergency services scrambling to contain the situation. $12,000 in emergency roundup costs, plus liability exposure for any accidents. Anonymous call to dispatch claimed I'd deliberately released dangerous animals in retaliation for community opposition to my terrorist demands. Perfect narrative to support Brielle's claims about my mental instability. But my security upgrade included motion sensors along fence lines and infrared cameras at blind spots. We caught everything: Tucker's lifted pickup truck, 3 figures in hoodies, the deliberate sabotage of fence posts designed to fail under pressure. Better yet, audio recordings captured their conversation. "Make it look like the crazy rancher lost his shit," one voice said. "Brielle wants this to look like he's dangerous." Sheriff Collins finally had undeniable evidence of criminal conspiracy. Tucker's friends were arrested within hours, charged with criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and conspiracy to commit property damage. Tucker avoided arrest by claiming he wasn't present, but his truck's GPS data told a different story. Brielle's final desperate move was calling a town hall meeting, claiming ranch operations threatened community survival and demanding county intervention through eminent domain proceedings. She had no idea she was walking into her own public execution. The criminal charges against Tucker's fence-cutting crew triggered a community revolt that Brielle never saw coming. 3 subdivision kids arrested for felony property damage, facing up to 5 years in state prison. Their parents, decent people who'd been manipulated by Brielle's lies, suddenly realized their children had been recruited for criminal conspiracy by the HOA president they'd trusted. But Brielle's response revealed just how deep her corruption ran. She hired criminal defense attorney Marcus Webb, charging his $60,000 retainer directly to HOA funds without board approval. When residents questioned the expenditure at Thursday's emergency meeting, she claimed community money was appropriate for defending residents against rural aggression. The backlash was swift and brutal. Homeowners started demanding financial transparency, questioning years of inflated assessments and mysterious security upgrades. 3 board members resigned rather than face liability for Brielle's unauthorized spending. Property values dropped 15% in 2 weeks as word spread about ongoing legal battles. Meanwhile, my documentation was revealing criminal enterprise spanning years. Pete's forensic audit uncovered shell companies, kickback schemes, and systematic theft that would make organized crime proud. The security firm billing $400,000 annually was owned by Brielle's husband's business partners, providing services that existed mostly on paper. They'd stolen nearly $2 million over 5 years. But the media war was heating up, and Schuyler's investigative journalism connections were paying dividends. Channel 7's follow-up story included interviews with 3 families who'd been pressured to sign false complaints against me. Elderly residents revealed Brielle had threatened foreclosure proceedings through her husband's bank if they didn't support her community safety initiatives. The reporter had also discovered Tucker's tax evasion. IRS documentation showed he'd earned over $200,000 from illegal lake access fees while reporting income of $37,000 on his tax returns. Federal charges were pending for tax fraud and unreported commercial activity. Tucker's Instagram empire was collapsing under scrutiny. Sponsors dropped him after learning about trespassing and fraud allegations. His follower count plummeted as people realized his family lake content was built on stolen property. Even his energy drink partnership canceled their Wilderness Challenge event. But Brielle's most desperate move proved she'd completely lost touch with reality. She approached me privately Saturday evening, finding me repairing fence damage from her sabotage operation. The smell of fierce sweat was overwhelming as she walked across my pasture in designer heels, stumbling on uneven ground like a fish out of water. "Garrett, we need to talk," she said, voice shaking. "This has gotten out of hand." I kept working, letting my body camera record everything. "What's to discuss, Brielle?" "I can make this all go away." $50,000 cash if you drop the legal action and let Tucker keep using the lake occasionally, just for personal stuff, no more commercial activity. Bribery, on camera, with audio. She'd just handed me a federal felony conviction. You're offering to pay me with money you stole from my tax payments? Her composure cracked completely. Look, maybe Tucker got carried away with the business thing, but boys will be boys. And yes, there might have been some accounting irregularities with the service district, but nothing malicious, just misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. $2 million in theft was a misunderstanding. I'll resign from the HOA board, she continued, desperation making her voice shrill. We'll sell the house, move away, never bother you again, just please don't destroy our lives over some stupid lake. Some stupid lake. Where 4 generations of my family were buried, where my grandmother's ashes rested, where my great-grandfather had built our first home with his own hands. She still didn't understand what she'd tried to steal. But her attempt at negotiation revealed something crucial. She knew the federal investigation was closing in. Her husband's bank was facing criminal charges for loan fraud and money laundering. The house they'd bought with stolen money would be seized through civil forfeiture proceedings. Their perfect suburban life was crashing down around them. The service termination notices I'd issued were creating exactly the pressure I'd hoped for. Police patrols for the subdivision now cost market rate $180,000 annually instead of the $30,000 they'd been paying. Emergency services required prepayment or private insurance. Road maintenance became HOA responsibility at $85,000 yearly. The emergency assessment notices hit mailboxes Monday morning, $3,200 per household to cover actual service costs. Most residents couldn't afford the sudden increase, creating a financial crisis that threatened the entire community's survival. Tuesday's emergency HOA meeting was standing room only, angry homeowners demanding answers about years of financial mismanagement. Several residents announced intentions to sue Brielle personally for recovery of stolen funds. Others were exploring legal options to dissolve the HOA entirely rather than face bankruptcy from her corruption. But the perfect venue for final confrontation was already scheduled. County Commissioner's public hearing on Service District Management Thursday at 2 p.m. All parties required to present evidence and testimony with full media access and public record documentation. Time to end this war once and for all. Thursday afternoon, the Cedar Ridge County Commissioner's meeting room was packed beyond fire code capacity. Local TV crews, newspaper reporters, and live-stream cameras turned the normally sleepy government chamber into a media circus. The smell of nervous sweat mixed with old coffee and leather-bound law books created an atmosphere thick with anticipation. I sat at the front table with Sarah McKenzie, our evidence organized in color-coded binders thick enough to stop bullets. Across the aisle, Brielle huddled with her expensive legal team 3 attorneys from Billings who'd driven down for what they thought would be routine damage control. The gallery was split like a wedding gone wrong. Left side, ranchers, longtime residents, and environmental advocates supporting property rights. Right side, subdivision residents, most looking confused and angry about emergency assessments they couldn't afford. In the back, Skylar live-streamed everything for her journalism project. Commissioner Janet Torres called the hearing to order, her voice cutting through the murmur. We're here to address allegations regarding Rural Service District Financial Management and Administrative Authority. Mr. Holloway, as the complainant, you have the floor. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 4 generations watching from beyond. Commissioners, what I'm about to present represents the largest municipal fraud case in Cedar Ridge County history. The first exhibit was my service district documentation yellowed papers from 1962, establishing my legal authority as administrator. For 3 years, I unknowingly held budget oversight powers for every municipal service in this region, powers that Mrs. Thornwick exploited to steal nearly $2 million in public funds. Brielle's lead attorney tried to interrupt. Objection, Your Honor. This isn't a trial, Counselor, Torres snapped. Mr. Holloway has the floor. I opened the financial analysis, numbers that told the story better than words. My ranch pays 60% of this district's budget, roughly $200,000 annually. Those funds were systematically diverted to subsidize private subdivision amenities through fraudulent contracts. The exhibits mounted like evidence at a war crimes tribunal. Security contracts billing $400,000 for services worth $80,000. Landscaping charges for private HOA property billed as emergency road maintenance. Pool chemicals and tennis court lighting charged as public safety infrastructure. But the real bombshell was Tucker's social media evidence. Mrs. Thornwick's son documented his own crimes, earning over $200,000 selling access to my private property while evading federal taxes. Every Instagram post, every commercial transaction, every sponsored event was theft of my family's heritage. The audio recordings played through the chamber's sound system with crystal clarity, Tucker bragging about profit margins to his film crew, Brielle coaching false statements for police reports. The fence-cutting conspiracy captured an infrared video with their own voices providing narration. "Your Honor," I said, my voice carrying across the silent room, "they didn't just steal my land, they stole my family's legacy and sold it back to strangers for Instagram content." The mic drop moment came when I revealed the bribery attempt. Brielle's recorded offer to pay $50,000 for my silence played through speakers, her admission of accounting irregularities echoing off chamber walls. The sound of her designer heels stumbling across my pasture, the desperation in her voice as she realized her suburban kingdom was crumbling. Commissioner Torres leaned forward, her expression granite hard. "Mrs. Thornwick, do you wish to respond to these allegations?" Brielle's attorney whispered frantically in her ear, but she pushed him away and stood. Her voice trembled like autumn leaves. "These are all misunderstandings, accounting errors, maybe some miscommunication about service boundaries. We never intended—" "Mrs. Thornwick," Torres interrupted. "We've just heard recordings of you offering bribes and admitting to financial irregularities. This goes far beyond miscommunication." The community testimony was devastating. Chuck Morrison described similar harassment attempts on neighboring ranches. 3 elderly subdivision residents testified about pressure tactics and foreclosure threats. Environmental scientist Dr. Rebecca Martinez documented ecological damage from commercial lake exploitation, showing before and after photos that made people gasp. But the most powerful moment came from an unexpected source. Margaret Henderson, the neighbor who'd been forced to sign false complaints, stood with tears streaming down her face. "We trusted her," Margaret said, voice breaking. "Brielle said Garrett was dangerous, that our property values would collapse if we didn't act. She threatened foreclosure through her husband's bank if we didn't support her. We were terrified." The commissioners voted unanimously on every motion. Terminate all HOA service contracts pending investigation, refer financial irregularities to state and federal prosecutors, support my authority as district administrator, and commend my efforts in exposing municipal corruption. Sheriff Collins announced criminal investigations into embezzlement, conspiracy, tax evasion, and filing false reports. The FBI's white-collar crime unit was taking over financial aspects. Tucker faced federal charges for tax fraud and commercial trespassing. As media swarmed the exits, Brielle tried to escape through a side door, but faced angry subdivision residents demanding answers about their emergency assessments. Her perfect suburban facade had crumbled in 2 hours of documented truth. The headline in Friday's paper said it all. HOA president arrested in massive fraud scheme, rural service district corruption exposed. 6 months later, justice tasted like morning coffee on my porch, watching sunrise paint the lake where my family's legacy would never again be threatened. Brielle got 18 months in federal prison and $400,000 in restitution. Tucker received community service, 5 years probation, and a lifetime ban from monetizing social media content. His 3 fence-cutting accomplices served 6 months county jail, plus restitution for property damage. The civil lawsuit settlement was even sweeter, $500,000 in damages, plus seizure of Tucker's truck and camera equipment used in trespassing operations. Brielle's house sale proceeds went into escrow, and her husband's bank collapsed under federal investigation, taking their remaining assets with it. But money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was justice. The new HOA leadership publicly apologized at a packed community meeting, establishing the Holloway Accord formal recognition of historic ranch operations and permanent protection against future interference. They replaced Brielle's cronies with decent people who understood that rural communities work through cooperation, not colonization. Tucker's lake access was permanently banned by court order, with violations carrying automatic felony charges. Commercial activity on my property became a federal crime punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment. The ecosystem started recovering immediately. Waterfowl returned. Invasive weeds planted by Instagram tourists began dying off, and the natural balance my great-grandfather had protected was restored. I established the Rural Heritage Protection Fund with recovered money, providing legal assistance to landowners facing similar HOA abuse. Within 6 months, we'd helped 47 families across Montana defend their property rights against suburban colonizers. The fund grew to over $2 million as donations poured in from ranchers, farmers, and rural residents nationwide who'd survived their own battles with entitled developers. The scholarship program for agricultural students became my personal pride. 12 kids from ranch families received full college funding in the first year, with priority given to those studying land management, environmental science, and agricultural law. Skylar changed her major to investigative journalism, inspired by our fight and determined to expose rural injustice wherever she found it. But the broader impact exceeded everything I'd hoped for. Montana's legislature passed the Rural Property Rights Protection Act, strengthening oversight of service districts and requiring transparency in municipal contracting. HOA financial abuse became a felony with mandatory minimum sentences. The law was nicknamed the Brielle Bill, in honor of our case. National property rights organizations used our documentation as educational material, teaching rural landowners to research their legal authorities and defend against harassment. The story appeared in legal textbooks, agricultural journals, and documentary films about land rights in America. A year later, we hosted the first annual Rural Heritage Days Festival, drawing 5,000 visitors to celebrate agriculture, conservation, and community cooperation. The event showcased sustainable ranching, environmental protection, and the economic benefits of working with longtime residents instead of against them. Tucker's former Instagram followers now learned about responsible land stewardship, wildlife conservation, and the real work required to maintain Montana's beauty. The lake became an educational site where university students studied ecosystem restoration and sustainable recreation management. Local businesses that had boycotted me during Brielle's campaign returned with apologies and renewed contracts. The feed store manager admitted he'd been pressured by threats to his bank loan, held by Brielle's husband's institution. Economic terrorism, but we'd survived and thrived. Standing by the lake last weekend, watching my daughter teach environmental science students about watershed protection, I thought about my great-grandfather Augustus. He'd homesteaded this land with nothing but determination and legal documents establishing his rights. A century later, those same documents had protected his legacy against suburban colonizers who thought money and political connections trumped law and justice. The water lapped against stones where Grandma Eleanor's ashes rested, carrying memories and wisdom forward to new generations. Meadowlarks called across pastures where cattle grazed peacefully, no longer stressed by Instagram tourists and commercial exploitation. Sometimes bullies pick fights they can't win. My grandfather always said the land teaches patience, but it also teaches justice. When someone tries to steal your heritage, you don't just fight back. You make sure they can never do it to anyone else. Drop a comment about your own HOA nightmare. You might be sitting on more power than you think. And smash that subscribe button, because next week I'm sharing how a retired teacher took down an entire corrupt school board with nothing but a calculator and public records requests. The land endures. Justice prevails. And Montana ranchers don't back down from bullies who mistake kindness for weakness.
Another day, another HOA drama wrapped up. If this story made you shake your head or fist pump in victory, smash that like button, share your own HOA experience below, and subscribe so you'll never miss another battle in the burbs.